5.7 has been a stacked update. Off the rip we get Skirk, a broken freeze DPS, and right after her we get the almighty Pyro Archon herself. Any of you newcomers or those of you that lost your 50-50, I'm sure you're all drooling at the mouth to get her, and naturally so. She sent waves throughout Genshin, changing it significantly, however not in a completely positive way. She's been very controversial, many have criticized her, and honestly validly so. She absolutely has big pros but equally big negatives as well. There's been tons of discussion surrounding this to the point where it's hard to see the truth about Mauvika, and to help you see both sides and understand why she's so controversial, as well as see the truth regarding her, I'm gonna share my brutally honest review of her. In terms of raw damage output, Mauvika is a beast. Her kit is busted and she decimates enemies. She makes them so easy to beat. This is probably the #1 reason you're pulling Mauvika, and how could you not? Her DPS is next to none, and absolutely she has the best teams in the game right now. Without a doubt, her hyper carry Mel team is the #1 team. Even with a well built but still C0 Mauvika with the gravestone, she easily one-shots enemies. Effortlessly she hits for over 1 million like it's nothing. Even in tougher content like the Abyss, she's still dealing hard stopping numbers that are well into the hundreds of thousands and close to 1 million. It's honestly ludicrous just how powerful she is. She feels like a C4 or maybe even C6 character despite being C0. She brings a whole new standard to DPSs and an entirely new definition to the nuke playstyle. If anyone remembers this playstyle, way back when zhongli used to be categorized as a nuke, and I love zhongli and all, but this is the actual nuke playstyle. And the same huge strength is also present throughout all her team comps. She excels in vaporized teams with Farina, and she's basically the best pyro unit in overload setups with Chevreuse. She's so powerful that honestly, it's a joke. But this absurd damage is locked behind a massive caveat, and this is Mauvika's most controversial aspect and is a big reason why she got so much negativity. Mauvika needs Natlan teammates. Recall how key fighting spirit is to Mauvika. It serves as the resource needed for her broken burst and for the burst to deal its absurd damage. Furthermore, it's fighting spirit that gives the active character damage percent. Mauvika gains fighting spirit through Night Soul points, and yes, while Mauvika can consume Night Soul points on her own with their skill, it's not enough. She only garners enough to get off her burst, but the burst and damage percent won't be high. Instead, she needs another source of fighting spirit, and this will come from her team's consumption of Night Soul points. The Night Soul points of Mauvika's teammates are counted towards her fighting spirit, and as such, Mauvika is quite literally locked to Natland units. Only by being played alongside them is she functional and at her best. Without them, she's clunky and her damage is nowhere near as good. This forces Mauvika to be heavily tied to Natland units, and this need is so strong that some have dubbed her the Archon of Racism, which, hey yo, I don't know about that title, but let's be honest, it gets the point across. She really wants to play with the Roan. This aspect of Mauvika is incredibly restrictive. It weakens her in a plethora of teams or prevents her from being played in them, and as an Archon she's meant to improve teams, yet just to even include her you need to massively alter her team just to accommodate for her. But here's the thing. Even after months of her release and tons of thinking on my end, I'm still not sure how I feel about this, since this matter is actually really quite nuanced. While this aspect of Mauvika is incredibly limiting, and certainly I wish this wasn't the case, let's be honest, this is pretty much the case for every unit. Every character in the game is locked to another unit. No unit is solely independent. Everyone heavily relies on another, and by this regard is limited or locked to them. By this logic, it's no surprise that she has this restriction. You may be thinking, but she's an Archon, she needs to rise above normal characters, and you're absolutely right, but this very thing even extends to the Archons. Everyone loves Farina, and naturally so, she's amazing, but she's also locked to other characters. She cannot produce much fanfare on her own, so she's significantly weaker without the characters she needs, of which are team-wide healers. So this makes Mauvika's restriction, which again really does suck, a little more bearable, or at least understandable, I suppose. But see, even with this, there's still an important discrepancy between Mauvika and Farina. Though Farina is absolutely locked to team-wide healers, Farina has a plethora of supports to play with. She works with Jean from Mondstadt, Charlotte from Fontaine, and Shilonen from Natlan, and other healers like Mika and Shenyun. So though she's locked to these type of units, you still have a lot of characters to choose from all the regions as well, and thus this restriction is really quite bearable. incredible. And better yet, even if you don't have a team-wide healer, Furina has this middle ground to where she works with single target healers as well, like Bennett, so even without her desired teammates, she still works and performs very well. On the other hand, this is not at all Mauvika's case. She's locked to one soul nation, her own, and there's no middle ground. You either have Night Soul characters or you don't. But again, while this requirement is limiting, Natlan characters right now are among the best in the game, so really even without this restriction, you'd be sort of playing Mauvika with them anyways. I've heard others deem this as a rule that will essentially hold Mauvika to 5.0, which I think is kind of true. Of course, future Natlan characters can be released, which can bring Mauvika back within the meta or kind of bring her to the standard of future versions, but even so, if this is true, this is not necessarily a bad thing in hindsight. With the likes of Cinder City, the buffs of this set are so broken, Mauvika is gaining immensely from this set, as do all other teams. This set is highly sought after, so even if Mauvika is locked to 5.0, she's also locked to the crazy buffs of 5.0 as well. But focusing back on Mauvika's need of Natlan characters, to be honest, it isn't all that bad. If you don't have any Natlan units, then absolutely Mauvika is a hard sell, but I'm sure most of you do, and she essentially only needs one Natlan character, that being Shalonen. Just through Shalonen's skill, she will give a 90 fighting spirit to Mauvika, in addition to all the buffs and elemental shred she gives. So this pair up is almost natural since it's so beneficial, but even if you don't have Shilo, you can still get away with another Natlan unit like Seedlali, Yansan, or in the absolute worst case scenarios, you could run 2 Natlan characters in your team. But the tremendous upside of this is that as long as Mauvika has this need met, this dilemma is almost turned upside down. As long as she has extra Night Soul points, on the one hand she becomes a fantastic unit serving you amazingly as a DPS, but she can also be fashioned into a support and become a legitimately broken support, elevating any DPS to insane heights. Get this, we already know Mauvika gives 40% damage to the active character. She makes excellent use of Cinder City, so on top of this damage percent, she's gonna give the team a 40% pyro damage plus 40% damage to whatever element your DPS has. Then factor in all the buffing potential that comes from Claymores. A sort of forgotten but still great option is the Wolf's Gravestone. Yes, it gives massive attack to the wearer, but it also gives 30% attack to the entire team when an enemy is with 30% HP, with which Mauvika it's almost too easy to do this. All of her brain-dead high scaling are still of course present as a support role, so though she may be intended to buff her team, she'll still hit like a tank and retain her nuke playstyle. All of these benefits shape her up to be an unbeatable support that is applicable to almost every team, making her the universal Archon we all wanted. You can focus on her teams that best use her element, so you can use her alongside Chaska in this melt setup, or equally you can mix things up with the Cryo DPS and have Mauvika melt off field. This same thing occurs with Vaporize. Alternatively, you can use her in overload teams, and you can even run her in top tier burning teams. Next to Kanich and Emily, you're definitely gonna pack a punch. But on top of all this, you can somewhat ignore her element and purely focus on her buffing ability, bringing us to my favorite type of teams with her. Since Mauvika has amazing general buffs, she can be played with literally anyone and give these units all new best teams or more than viable teams. And a prime example is with Ito. Ito is a defense scaling Geo unit that really wants to be played alongside Goro and therefore other Geo units. Arguably, he's one of the least synergistic units, but even still, Mauvika works with him and literally gives him a new best team. You've got Shalonen who'll give him 40% Geo damage. Shalonen's healing is perfect for Furina, so he'll get even more Geo damage in addition to passive damage. And of course, Sheila will fuel Mauvika's burst, so you'll get insane off-field damage with their burst. Then take into account Mauvika's 40% damage to Ito, and you've literally got his #1 team right now. In this setup, Ito's damage output is pushed significantly, much higher than his mono Geo teams. But even aside from personal damage, you're still likewise dealing very high damage thanks to all the vapes that are occurring in the background. This setup is so good that it's basically a top composition for really any unit. You can play Navia in this team. With a little tweaking, you can even slot in DPSs like Cloran for a highly buffed overvape team, and so much more. Therefore, Mauvika is almost like a two-faced character. She can either legitimately be the best unit in your account, buffing everyone and herself being incredibly powerful, but if you can't meet her dire needs of Natlan units, she's the opposite. Well everyone, this is my take on Mauvika. I hope you enjoyed and learned from it. Thanks for watching.